Patrick Tatopoulos, creature effect design, fabrication.
James McQuaide, visual effects supervisor and executive producer.
Claude Letessier, sound designer.
The sound was cool, Claude. I liked it.
Merci, and I like your creatures. They were very inspiring, in fact. And we had the hardest time trying to find the sound because Len was keeping on, being really, really demanding, and right he was actually to get the right vocal expression and movements, and that was a pretty interesting piece of work.
Well, the marriage of sound design and both what Patrick did and what I did in visual effects was paramount. I mean, it really brought both of what we did to life, I think, in a lot of ways, and really, we involved. You actually were the first person hired, I believe, before the DP, before the editor, because we all realized how important sound design was going to be in this picture, and it's that the success of visual effects and success of what Patrick was going to do was going to rely on you sort of breathing life into things.
I mean, it's true that it's very rare that I get except on very specific occasions that I get hired on that early on a project. And I remember how happy I was to meet with you and Patrick at the very, very early days of the projects to discuss about the creatures when they were not even done, and it was kind of very interesting to be able to follow all the different states of the creatures and come up with ideas that were constantly evolving.
Mm-hmm.
The weapons had evolved, but our orders remained the same.
I really love the work that the principal visual effects company on the show was Framestore CFC, an English visual effects company. And the tone of the movie, so in my mind, so well set by what they did here in terms of creating the sky and just the sort of general comic book mood that sort of pervades the rest of the picture. But what they did here was just, I think, just spot on and really, established a great tone.
The death dealer.
It was mostly sky replacement every time, no?
Most
of the shot at sky replacement.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff was shot actually in the twilight hours of a very tortured, long, somewhat unsuccessful night, and they came in and fixed the skies and added rain to quite a few of the shots as well.
See, I see you jumping now, and I think the cable work was amazing on the show. Actually, I don't know who did it. All the special effect rigging and cable work was great.
Well, the stunt coordinator was a guy named Brad Martin,
right.
And the stunts in this are just spectacular.
Yeah.
That's a great example. And then, obviously, later in the picture, there's some wonderful fight sequences where wires played a big role. Actually, wires played a huge role in the work that you did as well.
Mm-hmm.
The creatures crawling on walls and things. I'm not giving anything away, but stuff is really quite great.
All right, so here we are approaching the nightmare sequence, where actually, in terms of sounds, we had to deal with a almost 12, 13 minutes heavy fighting action scene, which was really difficult to get everything really detailed.
Well, the challenge I remember here was the fact that you need a dynamic. It's such a long action sequence. Your initial impulse is to hit every gunshot and every footstep and every bit of action. But when you play it back in a 15-minute period, it becomes monotonous and doesn't nearly have the effect that I hope, or I think the sequence now has. But that required us to basically go back in and in a lot of ways weed out a lot of the great work that you and the guys, your editors had done to try to find the essence and, as I said, to give it sort of peaks and valleys that allow the audience to be involved.
Absolutely, it's very complex because it's always very dangerous. I mean, it's very important to create that sonic shape into that sort of a long sequence, and it's always very tricky because you should never lose the ecstatic truth that you have in a scene. Otherwise the audience gets thrown out of the mood, and I think this whole thing works pretty well.
It's a fact. When you go see the movie in theaters, you see people talking about the sound of things just blasting them between the, like the gunshot, the wolf and thing. I mean, I'm not surprised where Len got you started very early on in the process. Obviously, it was a big, strong aspect of. I mean, it's very visual, and the sound is very important as well. I just want to mention Bruton Jones on this because he's not here. Bruton Jones is the production designer. Happens to be a very good friend of mine. I think he did a stunning work on this movie. Len's very visual as well, and I guess they were like a great team together. But that's a perfect scene where you see the sets are. It's basically like a train station, subway station, but the look of it, the texture of it is very.
It's all a set.
Tone,
we took it over a train station and constructed the the subway look around it,
right.
And it's Bruton did a brilliant job. I mean, everybody really. It was a very low budget picture, which I'm certain Len talked about on his track. But to give it the look that it has we spent less than $22 million to make this picture.
Yeah.
Really came down to contributions from you, Patrick, obviously, and Bruton and Tony Pierce Roberts, the DP, and Claude, really making it seem like a much, much bigger picture than it really, we could have afforded to make. Another interesting thing about this sequence is the picture, the entire movie was corrected digitally, using a sort of a new way of typically movies in the past have been photochemically corrected. If you've ever done still photography, it's that process. In the last 18 months, 2 years, an option for filmmakers is to do it digitally and it's sort of like treating your entire movie like a Photoshop still,
right?
Where you use Photoshop to bring up the contrast or play around with colors. And in this sequence, Len wanted this very intense blue, green look, very contrasty. Obviously bright whites and deep blacks, and it was a challenge. I mean, this was not, in the sets. It was not in the costumes, even to a certain degree, and to sort of pull the look out was a challenge. And I think, again, very much like the sky replacements that CFC did in the opening sequence, the look gives it a certain feel, a certain comic book, and in some ways a very epic feel that makes it seem like a much bigger movie than truthfully it is financially.
Well, the great thing is it is very monochromatic from the beginning to the end, but you also still have a very strong richness of color that still they still appear through. The tones, the blue, gray, metal, but you still see the tones of color. It's not just blue, although it feels. Okay, here it's funny because the first wolf we're seeing is actually a CGI wolf morphing. Which
this is our homage to Rick Baker and American Wolf in London.
Exactly.
He did it with air bladders and prosthetic, and we tried the CG route, and I think it worked.
Do you know what's interesting? There is an aspect of, like you said, mechanical and bladder that's sometimes a little jerky, and sometimes you want to do that when you start doing the CG to give it that like rough breaking kind of aspect. When it gets too smooth, you don't buy it, and I think that was a great way to approach the CG transformation, is making it like kind of jerky and not. A little mechanical in some way, like bone crushing and transforming.
Well, early on, Len and I, and certainly Patrick talked, and Claude actually, about how we wanted the transformations to be real, as if the creatures really, or a person really went through this. And if you think about it in some sort of logic, you would have that kind of bone jerkiness, bones resisting and then giving way, and then muscles holding back and then giving way. So to create that kind of jerky feeling was, obviously our intention.
And it feels very painful too, which is you don't want to feel too comfortable, and becoming a wolf. It's all.
That's also being helped out quite a bit by sound design. I mean, obviously visual is doing part of it, but sound is telling you a lot more what's happening beneath the skin, which is where the transformation is happening.
It's interesting also the creation of the teeth, which were very subtle, just to give it a little edge without. Most of the time when you put dentures into actors' mouth, obviously, it becomes a huge challenge to talk and have a dialogue. I mean, Len wanted those teeth to be just very discreet. There were different stages, of course, in that case, so it doesn't distort the face. And I think it came out okay because Kate remains very pretty with it. It doesn't distort a mouth.
The other great thing about the teeth that you did was that we were really expecting to have to replace the dialogue for a lot of the performances because of the teeth, because they would get in the way of the tongue and not allow you to enunciate properly. But that wasn't the case at all. We replaced nothing because of teeth, which was a real nice surprise.
That's the sound here. First time I sat down and went, I love how you feel these things happening in another room next door. To feel the very power. I gotta say, because when you design the wolf, you build them and stuff, you still don't know how they're gonna sound. Like you just, you've done the wolf, they're shot, you're gone. It was amazing to hear the sound. I mean, it's amazing what it does and how much bigger they look and they feel when the sound makes sense, And I think that came out really great. I love that scene actually.
Well, that's the first time we get a glimpse of your
Of the suits,
your
actually.
creation, yeah. The performers, I was very impressed by the guys who actually put the suits on and did the performance. They actually were wearing, what I guess 18-inch stilts.
Exactly.
And they were wired to the roof so they could hold their balance while they were swatting at each other. And it was, they really brought, again, like sound did, they brought a life to the work that you had done, Patrick.
Another cool, like weird jerking morphing, which I thought, it's nice because you just get barely a glimpse of the wolf when they start transforming.
The work was done by a French company called Bouffe, who did a remarkable job considering they only had 4 weeks to pull that together.
Bouffe did that. Bouffe are good friends of mine. I didn't even realize. That's fantastic.
As they are of yours, right?
Oh, Pierre Buffin is a personal close friend of mine, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Buffin is fantastic.
Yeah, he's one of the best.
Hi, Pierre.
He's one of the best in the world, really.
Yeah. I think another thing on the casting here, Len has really, I personally feel, has done an amazing work on choosing the characters being wolf and the characters being vampire. There's a slightly more sophisticated look in the vampire, more refined, when the wolf are more beastie, but yet everybody has got a style and very elegant in some way. But you can tell on looking at the actor what they are before you see the costume. If they're going to be wolf or vampire. I thought that was kind of well achieved.
We have a serious problem.
Magnificent mansion we shot in here. The carving on the staircase, I just was always amazed by.
Yeah.
I'll have to run a few tests. It's definitely an irradiated fluid of some sort.
Ultraviolet ammunition.
Daylight harnessed as a weapon.
You expect me to believe that a mangy animal came up with the bullets specifically engineered to kill vampires?
No, I'm betting it's military. Something they stole, some sort of high-tech tracer around.
Look, I don't care where they got these things. Rigel is dead and Nathaniel could still be out there. We should gather the death dealers and head back down
Okay,
there.
we're just watching now. It's fun.
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time. It's pretty cool.
Do you mind if we don't say anything?
I like the movie.
They opened fire on us in full view of the public. And from the commotion I heard down in that
You
tunnel...
said yourself you didn't actually see anything.
Look, I know what I heard, and I know what my gut tells me, and I am telling you, there could be dozens of lichens down there. Who knows, maybe more. Hundreds.
We've hunted them to the brink of extinction.
Craven's right, Celine. There's not been a den of that magnitude for centuries. Not since the days of Lucian.
I know.
The picture was shot in Budapest, Hungary, to take advantage of, the sort of... I mean, obviously Hungary is relatively close to Transylvania when Transylvania was still around. So it has the same sort of mise-en-scène as what you expect from a vampire movie. So this was the inside. This actually is not something that Bruton built, but a set that he found, or a location that he found. And all throughout, we're going to see a lot of things that, if we had to build, would have been, again, taken us way out of what we could have afforded to do. And it was just sitting there waiting for us to arrive.
Well, in a case like that, when you have this type of budget movie, you got to select the set you're going to build and just build them right and build less of them, but make them very, very special.
This, I think, is this set. Going back to what I was just saying, this is something actually Bruton built, and this set, when we cut to the crypt and when she looks through the window in a second, is epic. I mean, it's just a beautiful, beautiful set.
Mm-hmm.
Never in a million years imagined it would photograph the way it does. It just looks huge and, as I said, really very rich. It's also a real great piece of score, I thought, that Paul Haslinger, the composer, did.
Yeah.
Again, it's sort of epic and big, and it makes the set seem bigger in some weird way, which is quite great. He did, I thought, a tremendous job. He really was called on to do, I mean, it's pretty much wall-to-wall music, over 100 minutes of music in this picture, and really does a great job of making it exciting to watch.
Yeah, and especially I think he really achieved to define, you know, the various locations. I mean, this is definitely has got a very gothic feel, and it's, as you mentioned, it's huge, and the music is definitely helping big time defining that space.
How do you guys work together? Do you do sound and music at the same time? Is this like a collaboration work in some way? Because the sound is so involved there.
No, most of the time I just hate composers, and we enter into terrible fights.
So French.
But having to say that, you know what? It's true that, you know, I mean, creative fights are very healthy. They're very positive because they, you know, they make you make progresses. And but I'm joking. I mean, Paul is a long time friend. We worked together on
Mothman.
Paul
did some. Claude and I did Mothman together, and Paul contributed, I believe, some music to that movie, didn't he?
No, that's Jeff.
I thought Paul did as well.
That
Wow.
Blue Crush, definitely. We worked on Blue Crush together, the John Stockwell movie, and definitely, you know, Paul, besides being a very, very good composer and musician, he was with Tangerine Dream a few years ago now, and he's definitely got a, you know, this Eastern European darkness hidden within his soul, and he definitely reproduced it here. And no, so collaboration was very efficient. We exchanged files, we exchanged sounds, we exchanged cues, even if they were in progress. I was, you know, tweaking some of his cues. He was tweaking some of his sound. It was really interactive. And you know what? At the end of the day, it definitely leads to more comfort on the dubbing stage, because then what you're mixing works together versus I'm bringing my tracks, he's bringing his cues, and everybody has a big fight on the dubbing stage, which is definitely not the place where you want to have a fight.
Well, it's great to, in the case of this picture and other pictures you and I have worked on together, Claude, to blur that line between music and sound design or sound effects or whatever you want to call it, so that you're never quite sure that what you're listening to was brought to the table by the composer or brought by the sound designer, so that you always have sort of, it's just a soundscape. It's not, here's the music, here's the hard effects, here's the dialogue. It's all sort of one big mess.
Well, some movies call for that, and definitely Underworld called for that. And you know, there is no definition for sound design, at least none that I know of. And what's really interesting with that discipline is that basically you can reinvent or invent your own definition for every project. And in that specific project, you know, reinventing the concept of sound design was, you know, having the music being involved and play a big role and be totally interactive. Because, you know, I knew the sound editors and the sound crew even tuned some of the sound effects to be in tune with the music. You know, when we were pre-dubbing, oh my God, the car is in B, so maybe we could bring it into flat so it works with the music. Or it doesn't work with the music, just to create a very specific effect.
This was always, this image and the way it's been corrected color-wise was always sort of a touchstone for Len. I mean, it was one of the first things that we corrected with the colors we worked with at DFL in London to, you know, give the whole picture the look it has. Her name is Jed, and she did, this is one of the first things she did, and Len walked in and loved it, and basically said, I want the entire picture to look like it's in the same arena as this. Really beautiful greens and blues, and obviously the black and white, but really quite beautiful.
That's obviously a set as well.
It is. Well, no, actually, it's a set built within sort of decrepit. So it was a factory of some sort. I can't remember what the factory was at this point. And Britain sort of found a bit of it and built a bit of it, but the end result looks great.
And you know what, the whole goal about the soundtrack, and I'm talking about music and sounds, because the picture has that very specific aesthetic, the color correction. I mean, it's so specific that I really, from the very beginning, wanted to give the soundtrack a very organic quality. And besides, the Underworld is pretty much, it's like, it's like a delicate a plate of trips, or it's something really, how do you call that? Boils from the intestines.
From the intestines?
Oui, c'est très intestinal. Comme
I
environnement.
can't help you there.
Ah, putain. Non, c'est très
Can you
intestinal.
translate for him, Patrick?
Help!
You're like inside,
Gutsy?
Like,
And you're
yeah,
in
it's
the
very
bowels?
gutsy. It's in the
Gutsy,
bowels,
in the bowels.
And basically, the whole sound had to sound very bowely in a way, and we even went and recorded with a very specific set of microphones all the backgrounds into the sewers of the city of Munich. And we spent hours in the sewers with like water up to the knee and tons of little creatures swimming around us. But at the end of the day, we got a very incredible acoustics. And for the main scenes of the Underworld, I even recorded some Alp horn playing from like 2 miles away from a tunnel, so we could get this acoustic impulse.
Didn't you have that? Wasn't that someplace near a cemetery where you were recording that?
Alors, actually, yes. So the album it was a long, like 5 miles long corridor in the sewer, and the Alphorn player was at one end, and we went all the 4 miles away. We were at the other end, 4 miles away, with the whole recording system, because the acoustic, I mean, the sound being entrapped into that tunnel, it travels very far. And I didn't want to get the sound of the Alphorn as such, because it's got nothing to do with the movie. It's not a mountain movie. And I just wanted this fragmented, tone. So we went, and the guy was blasting. He was wearing lederhose and this little Bavarian hat, and he was blasting like crazy.
I wish you shot it.
And we would get the sound at the other end. And in between, on top of the tunnel, there was a cemetery, and people were having a ceremony, burying someone, and they got like super scared because they got this creepy sound coming from the hole, like something tonal coming out of the, So they called the police, and we had to deal with all this, and we were like really sorry, because we were far from, being disrespectful here. It was just an incident. But at the end of the day, everything went back normal. But
Sorry to interrupt.
No.
I was just reading a couple of articles from Len in magazine saying that one of his big influences is Alex Proyas. That there was a visual aspect of what he had done which was very influenced by Alex. I think it does feel like there's an influence, but I think he took it to another level, which is much more personal. And I think some of the richness of the set, the way it's lit, the fact that it's happening in sewers, you have the wetness. And one thing that Alex loves to do is like wet down the edges of every piece of set, even if it's supposed to be dry. And the way it catches on the light, very similar feeling. And
How many films have you done with Alex?
it's my second one. Alex hasn't done many films. He's done, The Crow, Dark City. We did that together.
Right.
And now iRobot. But I want to talk about iRobot today. I feel a bit. but basically, I mean, I was mentioning that to Alex, and he was, and I know he's going to go see the movie really soon because it's kind of crazy now. But I think it'll be. It's nice to see that you have created some kind of feeling, and people are just using some of that texture.
Mm-hmm.
I think Len has really used that and gone beyond that. I think it's great.
Or you'll have to wait till he gets back. He's not in some kind of trouble, is he?
I think the costume's amazing, and that's one, yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, Kate looks spectacular. I mean, everybody looks really spectacular in their garb.
Yeah. It's true that Kate looks incredible, and it's also true that since the very beginning with Len and I mean I told Len at the very beginning when I saw some early footage that I would like really be trying to define her tonal signature or oral trace. Every time she moves, or even in some fighting scenes later, I'm grabbing and creating some sort of very bizarre wind on her hair moving and stuff. And I think, the costume is incredible. The way she shot is incredible. The way she acts is really, really, really cool. And basically, I think I was really enjoying doing little sounds on her, even sounds that you don't necessarily hear, but basically that make her sexy, stylish, and subversive.
Cool. So
Well
the wolf running on the corridor we're going to see in a second were actually shot on green screen and as a separate element.
Well, it depends on which shot we're talking
Yeah,
about.
let's look at this big one. I'm actually interested to see.
The shots where we're going to see many wolves running at camera are actually shot in, the set was inverted, the hallway was turned upside down.
Right.
And
that one,
and
actually,
each were
that-
shot, each wolf was shot separately and then combined.
That's what I'm saying. So it was a composite shot, basically.
It
They're
was.
not-
It wasn't against green. Although some of the singles you're going to see up here were against green.
Right.
But the wide shots, like that, was a green screen shot.
I see. So what we did for those guys, basically, they were wearing those big extension leg. We removed the extension leg and create some different type of fit just for the shot. So the guys could actually run on 4 legs really quickly, and you can't really tell the difference on them.
The thing that really makes those shots work for me, and you have to go back and take a look, is that CFC added plaster coming off the walls and things like that give it a reality that
Exactly. You need to feel the impact of the weight.
is one of my favorite Sonic moments.
Yeah.
Anytime you can find silence in an action movie is, in my opinion, a brilliant thing. So frequently you just hit over the head for hours and hours and hours with very loud sound. And this is a very loud movie, there's no doubt about it. It's the kind of film that called for it. But there were, 3 or 4 times where we found moments of silence. And again, going back to that idea of a dynamic, because it is so loud, frequently when those silences come, they really carry quite a bit of weight.
Oh. How do we squeeze that in now? So Windy did some fabulous costume in the movie.
They're great.
I love that scene because you feel he's going to turn into a wolf when actually he's it's really the way people were.
I love these shots too.
Yeah.
CFC did a terrific job with Andy Rawlings and Rob Duncan
Amazing.
at CFC, just making these look real. There's
Very
nothing
convincing.
about it short of his neck is
Yeah.
everything else is CG except the actor.
Very convincing.
What the fuck is going on?
Coming up as one of my favorite stunts in the whole picture.
The
when
kibble work.
Yeah, when Lucian's fought when chasing after the car here, he's actually running on a big long mat that the car is dragging, which is what gives him that
That was
sense
an
he's running very fast.
Excellent concept.
It's all
Yeah.
it's all on camera. and
Yeah.
It's, basically it was a carpet being dragged by the car, and the stunt guy was running on the carpet behind the car, and because he was already being pulled at the same speed of the car, if he ran, he was going that much faster than the car in essence, and therefore able in camera to get the sense that he was, basically catching up on able to run fast enough that he could catch up to a speeding car.
But that was very effective, though. I didn't know you guys did it, to tell the truth, but I thought it really sold itself big time. Maybe because he's actually going that fast. I mean, it's hard to
Anytime
beat
you
the
can do it
real
in
thing.
camera, it's always going to look. I mean, again,
Yeah.
that's why a lot of what we did, instead of doing CG creatures like so many films do, we relied on you to give us creatures that we could to use in camera, because there's a weight and there's a reality to things captured in camera.
And now it's what's happening out there's like the combination
Actually,
of CG
here's a
and
classic
that.
example. This is a miniature right here. It's all you would never. There's a guy named Gene Warren. Gene did T2, and we worked together on Arlington Road and Mothman. Did the bridge sequence in that picture.
Yeah, that's great.
Really great work. And this is all CG, all captured in camera. Looks absolutely real. Really quite great. Even this actually was we shot the actors in the car against black in Budapest, and then to give the sense of underwater, we shot a plate during the miniature shoot just of dust coming up, silt coming up from the floor of the set we'd set up for the miniature shoot, and CFC put it together, and suddenly you're underwater.
Yeah.
And it's very, very effective. But it's effective because they are natural elements. It's not like we relied on CG silt or CG water or anything. We went out and shot the plates of what nature gave us and put them together and got something quite great. How long did you and Len work on the creature design, and how did that?
Quickly, I want to say that it's funny because I met Len a few years back on Godzilla Independence Day, so we knew each other.
What was Len doing on?
Len was doing, if I recall, was props at the time. But he already had in mind what he wanted to do. Probably was already directing some music videos, and we never talked about it. So when he came to the shop, Bruton called me one day and says, I got this, remember Len from Independence Day? He's directing a movie. We've done videos together. We'd like you to maybe do the creatures for us. So he came to the shop. It was nice to see him again, and we're starting to talk. I mean, Len had already come with some kind of concept drawings for Wolf, and especially for the hybrid character, to tell you the truth, not really the Wolf per se, and came with some stuff already. And, like I do all the time, starting to sketch out quickly a few rough things based on our conversation together. And I would say, what did it take? Maybe like a month of developing the Wolf until we got something that sort of like pleased him. And
where were your ideas coming from? Just sort of adjectives that Len had thrown out?
Well, I got to tell you something. I mean, one thing just a quick one about the Wolf is I always felt, like an example, back then I was still in France when Rick Baker did the American Werewolf in London. To tell you, my favorite werewolf of all time is still the Rob Bottin one from the Howling. It's kind of a weird look. It's very twisted. I always thought that was the coolest. But there is one thing I like on the Rick Baker one was what he called the change of heads. Basically, it's like the head between the first actor and the final wolf. I thought those heads in between that were extending were the most appealing to me. I didn't really care so much about the final werewolf in American Wolf in London, but I liked very much the in-between stage. I thought when you feel something that's really in between the man and the wolf, there's still features of a man in there. It's quite disturbing. So something, not really thinking about it, but something in the back of my mind, I thought that was, if I had to do a wolf one day, it would be somewhere in between the two things. So my first pass at it were very short muzzle, not the full wolf. And Len actually pushed me to do longer muzzle for longest time, and then we found that thing in between where it seemed to be not over the top, typical wolf, neither too close to the human. That took a little time, but once we found the right proportion, I think that was it. Len was kind of like sold, and then we went through budget things. You remember.
I remember.
Tried to get the job going, and we did, and it didn't take too long. And then Len kept coming, to look at the detail work, sculpting, and development, which shows the hair together, the type of colors. Len always wanted black werewolves. Clearly, they had to be. Of course, they look black in a movie, but they were painted brown and different layers of colors. But that was something that he really wanted, and not too much hair either, which I was a big supporter of. I think.
So was I.
Yeah, too much hair. No, it's been done. Anything we can do to give it a different look, and I think they came out okay at the end because they looked I think, different. We always try to make something look different, you know. I think in some ways they have a lot of cat features in them.
Very much.
And that's what maybe takes them away from the typical werewolf, is a lot of the features are very cat-like. And I think I made this happen in a design based on some other comment from Len saying they should be extremely quick, very fast and thing. And when you think quick, you don't think wolf or bear, you feel more like cat and thing. And so I think that all those discussions together sort of led us to go toward that direction.
So why did you bring him here? He saved my life.
In the fabrication process, what was the... That
You
took
know,
a couple months. Yeah?
Oh yeah, what you do, you cast your actors and create a mock-up of what the extension legs are going to be. Because when you sculpt a wolf around someone, what you want to do, or any type of makeup effect, you want to introduce what's going to be mechanical later. So you have to create your mechanical leg extension first. Then you put your actor on top of those leg extensions. Your actor, I mean the cast of your actor, which is a print of the actor basically, and start sculpting on that. I mean the sculpting part is, in a sense, one of the most appealing aspect of the fabrication, because the first time you see this thing in 3D in front of you to its real full size.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's still lacking the hair, still lacking the paint, it's not moving. But I think to me, it's one of my the most exciting part of the job.
I remember that. I actually remember that moment, and the scale of it was just awe-inspiring. You walk in, and there's a 7.5 foot creature that
it was fantastic.
you're very happy is not moving.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just gotta quickly throw the name of my guys, because I had some fabulous people between Guy Inber, who supervised the shop, Oana.
And Guy actually was on set with us.
Guy
and
was on
just
set
a
with
brilliant
you.
job of keeping it. To put the characters in, obviously in the werewolf makeup certainly was, or in the werewolf suits was difficult, but the makeup applications which are coming up later, like Victor's mummy,
Exactly.
just a huge amount of work, and he did a really brilliant job.
Everybody did a fabulous job. It's gonna be hard to name everybody, but there's another guy in there. It's Steve Wang. Steve Wang, I'm a good friend of, and also a big fan of, work for many years on doing a lot of the suits. He did the Predator stuff for Stan Winston. And when you sculpt the creature, you have to make sure that it works. Suits make wrinkles when you bend over and stuff like that. And there's a technology behind that, and Steve was great. Another thing, just to finish, is I was also doing at the time, I was doing iRobot already, and Oana Bogdan was really great for me when I was in Vancouver, helping me on, keeping in touch with with all the fabrication. I had no fear having Guy go alone in Eastern Europe to do the movie, because we've done so many things together. I know it pulled it off well, and I guess you guys had a good time working together.
Great time, yeah. Going back to what you were saying about the folds, one of the things that I had allowed for in the VFX budget was removing folds.
Yeah.
I figured there would be something that would be required, and there wasn't. I mean, it was some money that we could put elsewhere. It was great to...
But it's a great idea to put it in there, because also using the wolf in the water, things like that, the latex can just take so much. They become like, remember, like big sponges. And
they smell really good after...
and they make ugly noise, which you have to fix. It's interesting that you put this in a budget, though. I never heard that, but it's a very good idea, because this happens inevitably in some places, So what we did, actually, to a little explanation why there were not so many wrinkles, is we took the actor's cast and we shaved him, so the guy was looked like he was 50 pounds smaller. And then you sculpt on this, which means when your real actors try to fit the suit, it's now extremely tight. We used to do it differently, of just making sure it's exactly the size of the actor. Then when the suit went on him, with all the work, they would become loose in some place, like a T-shirt, like anything you wear. On shaving the body cast of the actor, you find this suit being extremely tight. And even with this, we had to touch up and do more. That's what you want. You want the thing to create as little wrinkle as possible. On the furry creatures, you can get away with it. But our guys were pretty much like naked looking from the front, and you couldn't get away with it. So. And
naked except for one strategically placed
that's right.
bit of hair. Keep the MPAA happy.
Not that Len shot too much that part of them either, but...
Well, that's my point. It's nothing but an ancient story.
I think in the sequel we're planning to show a little more. To work on that.
Sort of like Boogie Nights meets...
That's all that matters. Now, where are you going with this anyway?
Nowhere.
It's always raining in this movie. Every single scene.
And thunder.
And thunder, exactly.
All the time.
But it works. It's absolutely appropriate. Again, sets the sort of comic book feel. Or graphic novel feel probably is a more appropriate way of describing it. But it certainly did not make your life any easier.
No, thunder are they're difficult to deal with in terms of sonic range. It's,
But they came across as natural. And sometimes thunder can get repetitive in movies, and you sort of, it's a sound that you hear so frequently that you just, okay, that's from, CD number 4, cue number, 23. It had a certain personality, the thunder.
Yeah, most of the sounds that are in here, in Underworld, are, most of them, like I would say 90% have been created from scratch. Even the thunder, most of them have been, tweaked from some thunders I have recorded in Oklahoma, which is meant to be the best sounding thunder in the world, and some analog synth on top of it. And also all the gunshots is an incredible craftsman, Beanie. He's a sound editor and sound designer from Germany. He created all the gunshots, and if you're listening carefully to the gunshots, they have a very specific personality every time Kate shoots. He has, one shot is 12 to 18 layers of sounds, including some breath, some vocal expressions, and they sound very elegant and yet powerful.
Well, what I love about the sound, the gunshot sound, is the casings that fly. If you listen to the 5-1 mix, you can hear some. You really hear the discrete sounds. You can hear them in left and right, just sort of after a gunshot, bouncing away and hitting walls and things like that. Just the little details that make it seem real. That instead of just being, an episode of a TV show becomes, a gunshot from an episode of a TV show becomes like a real event, which is.
But I'm really crazy about detail, because that makes the credibility, and this is basically where you get the truth from, and coming from the school of commercials, where people are getting really anal about micro management and micro details in every extent. Underworld definitely was the kind of work where you had to go very deep into the detail, including Foley, including movements, footsteps, everything. And again, as I said earlier, Kate had a special treatment for everything that was regarding her movements and her Foley, her footsteps, and gun handling, etc., etc.
You said you actually have vocals, and when someone shoots a bullet,
No.
you have voices or sound?
Only when Kate shoots. I wanted from the very beginning to give Kate's gunshots the same attitude that Kate has through the whole movie. According to my perception, which is a very elegant, stylish, badass character.
Yeah,
And that was the brief for the gunshots.
it's amazing.
And ever since he bit me, I've been having these hallucinations. I've been having these delusions.
I knew this guy was full of shit on the left. I knew, I could sense it. Don't worry, I'll be right back.
Jesus. Michael, are you sure this wasn't a dog?
I said it was a man.
Okay.
It was a man.
Okay, I got it.
He was after me. And that woman, the woman from the subway.
What woman?
Haven't you
This is Scott Speedman, who's playing Michael here, was just a real treat to work with. He was a trooper, put up with all sorts of, between getting bitten by wolves and going through, 3 and 4 hour makeups every day. Really was a trooper and did obviously a wonderful job in the movie, but it was a pleasure to work with as well.
Yeah, he's great. Fantastic.
And enthusiastic. So typically actors will just dread, okay, here we go, another 3 or 4 hours sitting there in the mirror as they make me into something else in makeup. But Scott understood that's what the film called for and was enthusiastic. And given that we were shooting, very difficult shoot. We were shooting 6-day weeks for 12 weeks, shooting nights for a large part of that.
In freezing places.
In freezing places with glass falling out of ceilings and all sorts of things like that. To have an enthusiastic actor was a godsend.
Oh, this is a big scene.
We get one of the ideas in this picture is these genetic memories that you can pass memories from one person to another, and there was a guy named Nate Robinson in a company called Entropic in San Francisco that did all the editorial and the effect on these genetic memories, and it really did a great job. We were never quite sure if the sequence was going to work. It obviously made sense on the script page, but it's one thing to read it. It's another thing to sort of see it, and it really conveys exactly as I think, at least I would imagine, a genetic memory, looking like.
What's great also is every time you see a little bit more of it, you see it that you want to be able to define more what's going on, and you do in the fact the way Len did it. It's like slowly being able to read a little more what the action is. I think that was great.
And it's an exciting way visually to convey exposition. Instead of just having, a prologue would have been a classic way of doing it, where you would have seen a lot of the stuff, not necessarily in this genetic memory, but in ones to come. You would have seen, how these characters came into being. But Len took that idea and turned it on its head and created these genetic memories with Nate, and really, very effective.
I remember seeing the first time I saw Len at the beginning, he came with a drawing he had done of that room, I remember. Len's very visual. He had the sense of what he wanted to see in the movie. I saw one of his early sketches and they were pretty cool, pretty much right on, actually.
It is great to have a director who can draw.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a big deal. Yeah, it's a big trait.
It's one thing to say, I want a big room that looks like a crypt. Another thing to actually show you a picture of what
Exactly.
you are intending.
To my knowledge, an awakening has never been attempted by one such as myself. The Elders alone hold the power to organize their memories and thoughts into a single cohesive vision, a detailed record of their reign. I can only hope Victor will hear my plea.
Great makeup.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's a big dummy thing we created for that. Just basically the mummy stage. It was actually 3 stages between this and the final for Victor. The final, I would say, revived character, and that was the first one was a dummy. Seeing now.
The idea of going inside these characters as they go through transformations actually came out of I think when the first time we had a meeting, Claude, with you and the writer Danny McBride and Len, we were talking about, I think you made the observation about making the sound, it's like watching somebody in a dentist chair getting their tooth drilled and then being that patient, and how the sound would be very different, which led to this conversation about, wouldn't it be interesting if we actually went inside these characters as they, in the case of here Victor come back to life, or in the case of later on when Michael transforms, we see ribs pop and things like that, which as far as I know has never been done in a movie. I could be completely wrong about that, but I can't think of transformations that have been shown from internally. It's always sort of seeing heads and heads popping out, or arms getting longer or whatever.
But
it's a
not
very cool
inside.
idea.
So who created the CG effect?
Oh, CFC. Andy Rawlings did a
Okay.
brilliant job. His team at CFC just looks absolutely real.
In this very city, preparing to hit us during the awakening ceremony. Even more disturbing is that if I'm correct,
Well, this blurry effect that Nate did for these genetic memories, it's
I love
great.
that. That's amazing.
Sort of smearing the images into one into one another. Another great little CG moment, as far as I'm concerned. The top of the crypts are actually, that's a CG construction. So all the latches and such that move is all being done in some great, very
really?
realistic CG. Yeah,
Oh, this is all CG. You
yeah.
didn't do it practical, this.
No, the practical ones were just a piece of wood that had been carved to look like that in that
wow.
design.
Yeah,
but
that's very convincing. I never saw it working. Yeah, it's perfect.
so all of it, when it opens up and the crypt rises in the
Yeah.
the scene prior, it's all computer generated.
Yeah.
What's so pressing?
Take a look.
Celine! I want to...
It's actually, I thought, interesting when I ended up seeing the movie after, just doing the creature and not being on the shoot. But this mix of like very gothic, medieval look, and the technology mixed up when you see them holding a cellular phone later. It's interesting because you have a tendency to feel you're in another world, another time. And it's kind of a clash when you see those things, interacting with them. It works well. It becomes a surprise. You're so... I mean, it feels to me this is... there's not a time period for this. I don't believe it's either today or it was like, I can't set it up in special time.
But I think that's...
There's cars, but,
Right.
This is, I'm pretty fond of this genre of movie, and I have to say that, Len definitely has a very strong vision, and he's, like most of the time these movies look like, trendy from 2 years ago. Len has really made something that's trendy in the next coming 2 years. I mean, it's a trance genre. I mean, it's really going beyond lots of little details, the way it's shot, the way it's up, the picture looks, obviously. He's really created something totally unique, and I think the young audience is pretty responding to that.
What? What's this ruckus?
I still don't know what ruckus means.
We've explained it to you many times.
This was one of the... Everybody
How would you say ruckus in French?
Gosh, busted. I don't know. Ruckus?
C'est quoi ce bordel?
Je sais pas. On le fait en français, le commentaire? Sorry about that.
We'll have to subtitle the commentary track.
No, I don't know.
This truly is absolutely astonishing, fantastic, some of the best makeup I've ever seen. This is just absolutely brilliant, Patrick. It really is.
I appreciate it. I get it.
So every time I watch it, between what Bill Nye brought performance-wise and what you brought, it's just the greatest character.
Thanks. I'm a big fan of the next stage too, as well. I'll tell you. I mean, almost. Most people like this one best. I have a tendency to like the other one, maybe because it's a bit more subtle in some ways.
Could be.
But what's impressive is all the cable behind him, all like the tubes and stuff. But it was exciting to do different stages like that. That was really, sometimes you get to do a creature and that's it. Then you have a chance to do like the 3 levels evolution, and that was kind of fun. When you could see the sculpture, when the guys were sculpting the 3 different stages at the same time, you could totally see on the table, on the workshop, all those stages together. You could really see the progression. It was very interesting.
Consider yourself lucky. Most humans die within an hour of being bitten by an immortal. The viruses we transmit are deadly.
And if you bit me, what, I become a vampire instead?
No, you die. No one's ever survived a bite from both species. And by rights, I'd stop the car and kill you myself right now.
Then why are you helping me?
I'm not! I track down and kill your kind. My only interest is finding out why Lucian wants you so badly.
You know why I've been...
No, it's true that everybody, and I remember the whole, sound people were like pretty amazed by how he looks. And to tell you the truth, by the end of the mix, everybody in the sound team, and including James and Richard and Len, actually, we're all looking like him. because we were working so much, so crazy hours, like 20 hours days and stuff. We all looked like him. That was really cool.
Just a bunch of houses on the back of your...
That's how we got sustenance.
Yes, exactly.
There's only so much chicken and rice one can eat in Munich.
Oh, Len and food, yeah.
There's another example where the DI process, the way we color corrected the picture helped out. We had highlights on his makeup that were there, but by bringing them out, enhancing them, by basically bringing out the highlights, it made him seem that much more wet and sort of creepy in some weird way. And it was, again, Jet did a wonderful job of, in a lot of ways, helping the makeup be even greater than it already was.
Amelia and the council members are arriving tomorrow night.
There's also the performance we can't forget. I mean, you can put anything you want. The guy doesn't do the actors behind. And I think...
Bill's spectacular. And the makeup allows Bill to be spectacular. I mean, instead of being too much makeup and weighing him down, he still can be, Bill Nye, great actor, but have a face like you've
it's still him.
Created. Yeah, it's
still him. It doesn't become another thing, which I think that's...
I'm seeing these things, these hallucinations.
They're not hallucinations. They're memories. You've been bitten. His memories have been passed to you. This is one of the places we...
You cast Bill for that, right? Bill came in to get a cast for the makeup.
We did, yeah, definitely.
And how long did that take?
I mean, to cast him?
Well, yeah, the casting is...
The casting is, just a half a day process, There's like 3 or 4 people working, and you do the face first, and then you do the chest, arm, hands.
We own it. First there was synthetic...
Some people don't want to go through that. But casting is a weird thing, because you find yourself sealed into a plaster kind of cast. First you put the alginate, which is what the dentists are using to cast your teeth when you do, and that liquid is very kind of cold. It actually gets colder while you put it on the face, and then it becomes hard. And when it gets hard, it remains soft, but becomes less liquid, and you start feeling this thing stuck to your face. Then you feel when the person does the plaster around it. The plaster is here to maintain that alginate, otherwise it falls apart. And basically you reopen the 2 halves and then pour plaster in this, almost like a cast, like a mold, and then you got the cast of your actor. But I had it done to me once just for fun and to try. And if you start thinking of spinning, then you spin really fast in there. You feel like you're spinning at 200 miles per hour. Some actors won't go through that. They just hate it. Claustrophobic. If you're claustrophobic, it's... imagine the only thing that are just open are your nostrils. Everything is gone. Plus, like I said, when you start feeling people putting the plaster bandage around it, you can feel the plaster hardening. It's almost like your head is sealed in stone or something.
How long are you in that plaster before you can be cut out?
I would say, let me think, for time to do it, maybe 10 minutes. But you have 10 minutes completely enclosed. I mean, 10 minutes for the process, I would say. And what you do, the best way to make people go through that properly is to talk to them through the entire process. We're putting this and then, so they know it's all...
Has anybody ever completely freaked out? And
well, it happened a couple of times. I heard friends of mine saying that, like, some actors just totally trashed the thing in the middle of it. Just they freaked out so bad that they just pulled all the things around them, and it's funny because people contain themselves for a while. You can see them starting to shiver a bit, and then they burst. Just that's it. I can't take it. And
so how do you deal with that? Do you sedative or something? Or how do you manage?
One way to do it is like you do it in different pieces. So basically, rather than having the luxury of having one head in one piece looking beautiful, you're going to do the forehead, and then you're going to have to do a resculpt in between. So it's a much longer process, but that's the only way you can get away with. There you go.
Saved me.
Oh.
Victor.
It's another brilliant piece of sound design where you hear when she's describing the family and what happened in the barn and all sorts of things, you hear just a little bit of a cry in the back. It was just so evocative without showing, some great flashback where you'd see the barn and blood and all sorts of nastiness. Just the little sound effect and your imagination was much more effective.
Well, it's true that, sound is I mean, sound for the movies is just, fooling around with your brains and tricking your ears because, we're trying to reproduce as much as we can the reality of life through speaker systems. And and what I like in sounds for movies is basically you can be really abstract, you can be really impressionist, or you can just hide little things, and by the time you realize you've just heard something, it's gone. And they have to be, really settled. And one thing that's really important about, this whole process is how sounds are spatialized, because what I really enjoy is the birth, the life, and the death of a sound within an enclosed space, and the way how it travels from left to right or front to back, etc., etc. And this is really affecting your perception of the whole oral trace of the movie.
What I love about the work that you and I've worked, films we worked on together, is that you certainly provided a reality, but you also, it's very expressionistic. I mean, a lot of the stuff you do is sort of what you associate with music, where music doesn't necessarily, when you do a hard effect and a door closes, we've seen a door close many, many times, and we have heard a door close many, many times, and we know what to expect. You'll put a twist on it so that, it'll actually have a symbolic meaning that affects you. If it works well, it affects you in a very sort of almost primal level. It makes you think of something that you wouldn't have otherwise thought of. It's not just a door closing. It's I don't even know exactly what. I'm trying to think of an example, and I'm not coming up with one. I'll probably cite one as we go through the picture. But that's what I think is the essence of sound design. That's what separates a sound designer from an effects editor or something like that. It's sort of you're sort of working in the same realm that you would expect a composer to work in, but you're not working with an orchestra per se. You're working with the same toolkit that a sound effects editor draws from, but you're creating the impressions that a composer typically does.
Yes, that's true. In fact, as you know, I've been learning, studying and teaching psychoacoustics for many years, and therefore trying to understand the impact, the emotional impact of certain sets of sounds on your human behavior or your mood and emotions. And the way I perceive sounds, basically, it's that before a project, we create together with the director a palette of tones, sounds, and try to come up with a definition of what he would love to hear in his movie. And therefore we create some sort of an alphabet. And then, it's very pleasant through the movie to create, oral sonic sentences using these sounds. And as you mentioned, a door close can be, as stupid as it is, it can be angry, it can be moody, it can be sad, it has a personality. And it has in life, because if you piss me off and I leave this room really angry, I'll close the door in a way that you'll never forget. And all these little details, this is what I said earlier. And yes, design is like composing with sounds, because this is coming from a French movement in the late 50s and the 60s, founded by Pierre Schaeffer and Pierre Henry, called musique concrète. And they came up with a concept 40 years ago now, or 50 years ago, that why would you need instruments to express musicality, as where in everyday life you can put your hands on pretty interesting instruments, like an aluminium can, or and like when I was a kid, I remember I would put some soda against my ear, and then all of a sudden I was like in heaven, because it was as if 1,000 people were applauding at me. It's like little applauds, and it's true. Take a can of and put it against your ear when it's open, and you hear applause. And then your brain does the rest.
Cool. No, really.
Your brain does the rest. I mean,
Instant ego boost.
Exactly. Either you perceive that as little bubbles, fizzy soda, or if you're a little bit imaginative, you go like, oh my God, and you imagine yourself at the Carnegie Hall with the standing ovation, and that works for everything. And then you said something about sound editors. A movie is a whole, and I always try to convey to the people I work with, the teams that we work together with, that movies, it's about joy, it's about tactile approach to sound. I mean, I can personally touch sounds, and some people had like emotional shocks, and basically they started to dream in color. And I had emotional shocks, a long time ago, and I realized one day that my dreams and nightmares, I would hear them in 5.1, left, center, right, and surrounds. And I was just missing the subwoofer. So let's say it's, it's fine. But then, and funny enough, I would even remember these colors, and mostly nightmares. So that's why I really enjoy a creepy or dark movie mostly. And but having said that, it's all about a movie. It's all about the love of cinema, and it's this team of people joining another set of team of people, everybody crafting beautiful things, like Patrick and the set designers and the DP, and everybody has its own little thing, and we're all contributing to a whole. And to be honest, as a sound designer, I would be like really feeling really lonely if I couldn't work with sound editors, because I would work with like I had no hands. It's like they're bringing me so much interaction and so much material to work with. That's a totalement indispensable element to the process.
You can shut down the movie we're talking about. Just kidding.
Here's my favorite sound effect.
Yeah, this is the worst. This is the worst sound effect in the movie.
We
Which
tried
one?
for hours. Hours.
Yes.
Which one is that?
Yes,
See if you
this
think.
one.
Here it comes. Not the gunshot, but what is that?
Yeah.
It sounds like a piece of metal sheet falling on the floor. And I'm sorry, I didn't find the right thing. And there were so many people all over the world trying to find the right sound for that.
Actually, literally all over the world.
Yes, in Germany and
U.S.
What was London's the special tie on the floor that makes that sound when it goes?
Yes, but this is basically folly of this gun falling, and it's not magic. It's dull, it's stupid, It's boring, it's not interesting.
But the amazing thing about that effect was that you tried a dozen things and they all sucked.
Absolutely.
Explain that.
I don't know.
That's like a first for you.
Yes, I felt it's very humiliating.
Well, next movie we'll put a gun falling on the floor and you can try again.
Put a piece of carpet there somewhere. So now, cool.
This is a great scene with the creatures, Patrick.
Yeah, this was an idea. Well, this actually is a CG creatures. Maybe the only time we really used, well, not the only time, but the most overt use of a CG creature. Rob Duncan at CFC's idea was to do a shot. Well, I won't ruin the shot, but a shot coming up with the creatures landing on the roof of the train, and just I think it's a wonderful shot.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, you can tell. I mean, it's very effective. That's sweet. I really love that one.
And the things that really made the shot was the animation was great. The creatures themselves were very well done. But little details like making the edge of the train bend and those things, and putting a little smoke in the foreground and little water driplets off the creature's forearm. Like we were saying before about the details in the sound design, the same applies to effects. Those little details are what really sells the shot as being real.
But having said that, it's very difficult because like CGI is being done, it's always in progress, and it's very tough because you really want to be finding that little sound on this water drop, and it always comes very late in the process. And
well, next time around, we tried to do a bit of this where you would be involved with CG, so that they sort of would, we talked about having little teams. You have Patrick and DP and, Bruden and Tony Pierce Roberts, and, we all have little teams. But the idea in this picture it was to have everybody work together, which sounds like an obvious thing, but is pretty rare in movies, at least in my experience. But to have you working with the various visual effects companies so that you're giving them ideas, so you sonically provide inspiration and then they're sending you ideas, and we did a bit of that. It wasn't as much as I'd hoped it was going to be, but next go around perhaps we'll do more.
Why are you helping me?
I'm not. I'm helping me.
The perimeter sensor's been tripped. We're locking down the mansion.
It's Celine. She's escaped. To go to him, to Michael.
I want that Lycan's head on a plate.
The DP on this picture was a guy named Tony Pierce Roberts, who is most famous for shooting all the Merchant Ivory movies, which is sort of a big jump to come to do a horror picture. But Tony was, again, a wonderful job like everybody else in this picture, and under very difficult circumstances, both financially. Probably didn't have the lighting package he normally would carry, and the stress of shooting 6-day weeks and quite a few setups on any given day. But Tony was a real pleasure to work with, and we did things on this picture that he'd never done before, and actually very few pictures had. Instead of printing, normally you would shoot negative through your camera, process the negative, and make a print. Again, like exactly the same idea as if you're doing still prints with a still camera. But instead of making print, we actually transferred the material to HD, which is a high def, which is a very high resolution digital tape format. And he'd never worked that way before, and was really I think very excited by the end about the way we ended up doing things. And then we could take that HD cam tape and watch dailies with it and conform it for purposes of testing and things like that. So it's a process we've used on 3 or 4 films at this point, and found it to be, in a lot of ways, it's much more easy to use and very cost effective. And by being in the digital realm, you have that much more control. You can play with, very much like we did at the very end here, the final color correction. You can isolate certain sections of the frame and change the color, the contrast just in those sections, or you can achieve colors that are, nearly impossible to achieve in film, all of which makes this very exciting. Another great sound moment, just a great, that had always been, the idea of taking sound away had been an idea we came up with at the last second, actually, and really changed the meaning of the scene. It became a scene about the fact that basically Michael was learning his powers. That he jumped and he'd fallen 4 stories or 8 stories, whatever it is, and landed and was okay. So his looking at his hands became the point of the scene, where with sound it actually meant something completely different. It was more about what's going on on the floor I just jumped from, as opposed to, oh my God, I actually lived.
But this is where you realize that, at least for sounds, I mean, it's constantly work in progress up to the very last second of the dub, and you shouldn't say that if you want to work on big movies, because, but the whole sound team that we work with, including me, we were just, on the ball every single second, trying to add this last little detail, because it's true that we are working for months and weeks in our cutting rooms with pretty decent size screens and picture and sound system, and all of a sudden we're bringing all this sounds to a dubbing stage, which is like almost a movie theater, and it's played like really loud, and the screen is really big, and it triggers new things, and it's.
They were also very fortunate to work with a director who was willing to try ideas. I mean, so frequently you get on the dub stage, you know, people are tired. It's been a long process, and you've done a lot of work, you know, in during the picture editing. So you have certain ideas about how it should sound, and you don't want to deviate from that. And we had a director with Len, and this applied, I think, to the work that Patrick, his work with Patrick, certainly the work that he and I did in visual effects, and certainly in sound, of being willing to try new things and always trying new things. And the end result, I think, you know.
It's interesting.
Yeah. This is some of my favorite visual effects work, not because it's showy, but all of the backgrounds you're seeing are CG. They were all done. We had shot this called Poor Man's Process. Basically, we shot in a car on a stage against black, and for some reason thought that would actually work, and it didn't when in the context of the cut. So we had a company called Luma and a guy named Payam Shahadi over there basically create a model of the street and then composite that model through the glass, through the, you know, outside the window. And it's, I mean, I hate to have admitted that that's what it is, because I don't think anyone ever would have realized that that wasn't but
very flawless, yeah.
The real thing. And coming up is one of my favorite mix moments. We were talking before about space, and again, I'm not sure if you can appreciate this if you're listening to this at home, but the way the music spreads once we go inside his body right here is, I think, just wonderful on a big dub stage or in a big theater. And then again, the CFC visual effects work here is really almost breathtaking. There's no way in the world that you would ever suspect that was anything but somebody's real ribs. Actually, we got a call from Sony at one point asking if they could borrow the prosthetic for, I guess they were going to use it for publicity of some sort, for the inside of the rib cage. And we had to tell them that it wasn't a prosthetic. And thank you very much. That's about as good a compliment as you're going to get from, you know, about some CG work. It's great music cue. Guy named Danny Lohner, I guess part of 9 Inch Nails, was their music supervisor and did that cue. It was just a real great cue.
My lord?
This is the no makeup version, of course. Looks very good. I mean, no makeup, what am I saying? There is makeup there.
He's defied your orders and fled the mansion, my lord.
Your incompetence is becoming most taxing.
It's not my fault. She's become obsessed. Thinks that I'm at the core of some ridiculous conspiracy.
And here's my proof.
Now I want you to tell them exactly what you told me.
That's a serious crush.
You bet. Lots of fishbone.
Is it?
Fishbone being crushed. And I will remember for the rest of my life Richard Wright's question, how do you get that fishbone crush sound? And I told him, well, you get some dead fish and you just squeeze them, you know.
That would make sense.
And he never came back to the dub. You frightened him away.
The key we knew was to locate.
Yeah, I love to use, you know, fresh vegetable and...
How'd you get the syringe sound? Didn't you syringe a chicken or something?
Oh yeah, but it was a dead chicken.
Oh.
Yeah.
You just like went with a syringe into a chicken?
Yes, because you know, like sometimes you go like, oh well, it's a syringe, so maybe I just take a syringe and stick it, and it's the right idea, but just sometimes it might not be the right sound.
Right.
And there it works. So I got this this chicken before it went to the oven, and sticked it several times, and actually I stabbed it pretty badly in front of my children, and I think they're still in trauma right now. They're just wondering what their father does for a living. You know?
Did they eat the chicken after that?
Oh yeah, it went to the oven. We had it for dinner.
There's at least 2 children who inherited this same trait. The sons of the Corvinus clan.
One bitten by bat, one by wolf, one to walk the lonely road of mortality as a human. It's a ridiculous legend. Nothing.
Let me be. But our species do have a common ancestor.
There is a descendant of Corvinus lying there. Not 3 feet from you.
Yes.
And as James mentioned earlier, it's true that in these specific areas where it's like pretty much you have, you want to hear what he is saying, and there is this blend between the music and the sounds, and you never really know where the music begins and where the sound or the tonal thing begins, and it's that's pretty important because you want to give a size to the scene, you want to give a color, you want to give a mood, but you certainly don't want to interfere what is being said at this moment in the picture.
Between our species,
There can be no such union. And to speak of it is heresy.
we'll see. One solution has ejected him.
Lucian is dead.
According to whom?
And there is also a very important person in the sound crew, which is the dialogue editor. Magda Habernickel was our dialogue editor on this.
Production dialogue was okay, though, wasn't
Production dialogue was okay, but it's a very important position in a movie.
No, wait! You, and you alone will know the truth of this.
Actually, the production dialogue, and I think that was excellent. We didn't have, considering how difficult the locations were, we didn't have to loop too much for technical reasons.
Right.
Memory serves, so.
Yourself, and inject it, along with Michael's blood.
Abomination.
Half vampire, half lichen. Stronger than both.
That's the screenwriter, Danny McBride.
I was ready to say it, Danny. Looking very sexy. I was surprised. I didn't know when I saw the movie it came from.
Actually, screenwriter, associate producer, and second unit director. Very busy man on this movie. It was that kind of movie, though. It's like everybody had to do wear many, many hats.
That's right.
What of Amelia? They bled her dry.
It has already begun.
Oh my God, you shouldn't have said that.
That's a badass death. So this one is cool. We did the makeup when he's turned to the left. Obviously, it's already on his face. So when he punches him, it's already there. You don't see it, and that's how you reveal this. But that was pretty gruesome. When you see it close up, it tells you.
One of the downsides of doing the grade on that shot where he gets hit is that we had quite a bit of goo that hits the lens. A lot of it gets obscured because we, desaturated it and turned it blue, so you don't get quite the red hitting the lens that we intended. But
you leave some space for imagination. I think those big dark areas are pretty freaky too. I think like a big gash in the,
You've been given an enzyme to stop the change. It may take a little time for the grogginess to dissipate.
Another chicken?
Another chicken? Chicken take 5?
No, Daddy, not again.
Desperate need of a lesson in manners. Speaking of manners, where are mine? Forgive me. I'm Lucian.
I need to go. I need to get back.
There's no going back. There's no going anywhere. The vampires will kill you on sight. just for being what you are. One of us.
So see, I mean, this movie is really working because all of a sudden we just stop talking and we watch it because it's cool.
What are you doing? Bringing an end to this conflict.
Your war, it has nothing to do with me.
My war?
Budget of the show was what it was. You know, it was what it was. And initially, we had very little money for visual effects. So one of the reasons we really relied on Patrick to do a lot of the creature work, at least initially, was for budgetary reasons, because you could make a creature and you can shoot as many times as you need to shoot it, as opposed to having to create a CG werewolf every time you wanted one, which in a sequence could be, you know, dozens of times. By the end, when the film tested very well, actually we didn't test it, but when the publicity on the picture, the hype on the internet was as extreme as it ended up being, we were able to get some more money and do some more work. But in many ways, it came a little bit too late. You know, these shots take 3-4 months to even begin to think about doing them, and it take quite a bit of time. And unfortunately, the money was not made available until the very end, so we could do some nips and tucks. But some of the big things that perhaps we would have liked to have done, and I'm sure we'll do in sequels, God willing, we didn't have time to do. But that said, you know, what's on the screen is just amazing. For, as I said before, less than $22 million to get this kind of look and from every department, it's just really astonishing. And there's also, I mean, I think we talked before about the fact that Len really didn't want to rely too much on CG. There have been so many bad CG creatures in movies past. In fact, very few good ones jump to mind. Maybe the Gollum creature from The Last Lord of the Rings. I'm sure there are other ones that I'm not thinking about, but they're infrequent that happens. So he really wanted to rely quite a bit more on practical elements, to use Patrick's creature, to do things in camera. By the end, he changed his tune a little bit. He really began to, I think, feel more comfortable in working in CG. We were fortunate to get really good companies who were willing to work on the picture for a lot less than they probably normally get.
Sonia. That's what started the war. I saw it happen as if I were there.
We were slaves once. The daylight guardians of the vampires.
Michael Sheen is so good in this scene. And actually, through the whole picture, really a great presence.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Even took a vampire for my bride. It was forbidden. Our union. Victor feared a blending of the species. Feared it so much, he killed her. His own daughter, burnt alive. For loving me. This is his war. Victor's. And he spent the last 600 years exterminating my species.
What are they gonna do to Sonia?
What can I say? It's nice.
It's just great.
We have company.
It's not what you expect from a movie in this genre. I mean, to bring that kind of weight to performances, way above and beyond.
Matters to be discussed in private. Please escort our guests downstairs.
council has been destroyed. Soon you will have it all. Both great covens and an ironclad peace treaty with the Lycans, who I trust will not be forgotten when the spoils...
Is that another set? That was the location as well?
It's a dress location, yes.
There's no defeating him.
That same factory.
Yeah.
That same cold, wet, miserable factory.
That's why they look good, because they're cold and wet.
You'd have done it yourself centuries ago.
To this day, I swear to God, he says, it's a trap. That's what and I know he says entrance shaft, but it sounds like it's a trap, which never made any sense to me. We actually looped it again. I think Glenn was willing to loop it again, so that I could actually hear it, entrance shaft, but still don't.
Oh, shit.
Great.
Yeah, the second whoosh is not very good. I regret. I'm sorry. It's too much.
Is it?
Why, there is a first whoosh and then the second one on the cut. It's a little heavy.
And if you had done your job, he'd still be...
It's not as bad as the gun.
It's not as bad as the gun.
The hell is Ray's?
I guess it never occurred to you that you might actually have to bleed to pull off this little...
But you know, it's like the whole organic concept of the soundtrack is, you know, we're inside. The Underworld is a living organism. It's constantly expanding, morphing, growing, and I mean visually, aesthetically, and I think, you know, music and sounds do play their role into that interaction.
Silver nitrate.
And all these little breathings and, you know...
This was a set.
Yeah, I love it. It's a great
That's
piece.
a location. It's actually a champagne factory.
You couldn't tell, huh?
A champagne cave, I guess, is a...
That's the set piece, huh? This one?
That's a set. Yeah. Transitions. It's all about transitions for you.
Yeah, it's you know, pace, rhythm, pulse.
To me, this next fight with the wolf happening soon is the big payoff. I mean, for the creature design, I think this time you see it really in its full splendor. And with the CG starting, which is pretty amazing, and I think the suit is really working well at that
Suit
point.
works great.
I think it's looking really good. When I saw that, plus I gotta say again, the sound,
yes,
I was like, in my chair, I was like, wow, this is exactly what I was dreaming of. The way it came out at the end, I was very pleased.
Thank you, Patrick.
Dorian, you are very welcome. Are you French? That's badass wolf right now.
Right.
But again, and this works great.
Yeah.
Such a simple idea, but every time I've seen it with an audience, they jump.
Yeah.
It's It's a nice bit of sound design. What is she hearing? What is Celine hear that?
Oh, yes. Oh, I want to be with you. That's Scott Speedman.
Right.
Yeah. That's a little his voice when you realize that he's kind of in love with her.
Mm-hmm.
I took this little line and put it in some wind, and she's just hearing this fragments of voice of his, and he says, "I want to be with you." You're not really sure, and she's not really sure. So that's probably one of the reasons she goes and checks why.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
But it's not literal. It's as
No.
if she somehow.
No.
There's an attachment there between the two of them.
Correct.
She's.
Yes. Yeah. She's linked to. This is beautiful. This is a great scene. Visually incredible.
Great stun here.
Oh, and the great moment of sound design, I have to say, is on Kate's hair. Look. This is magic. Kate, your hair sounds incredible.
She knows.
And here comes my absolute favorite sound design moment. I just love the story you told about somebody who was watching the picture when we were playing it back, and how when the sound went away.
Yeah, raise the finger like, that is too late.
I mean, it sounds like a projector dying.
Yeah.
So how did you do the sound of the wolves? What's...
Oh my
I'm interested.
God.
It's a mix of what? Gunshot?
It's, well, basically, it's several layers of me to give the human vocal quality. Obviously, it's been detuned, tweaked.
Yeah.
Some vintage sounds, like creature sounds from like 50 years ago, and some leopards and animal,
right,
all blended together. Most of the time it's been working fine. There are certain areas where I'm not super happy. I think what worked best was when with the whip fight, because all of a sudden there's a full expression. It's like
The vocal quality of the creatures also works very well, because so typically in a creature movie, the creature will just open its mouth and it makes a sound, and the sound has no relation to the shape of the mouth or the shape of the lips or anything, or in the case of what you've done here, it seems like the vocal is really coming from the mouth, and the shape of the mouth is the sounds reflecting the shape of the mouth that we're visually seeing, which is again somewhat unique.
That's the reason why I basically looped all the monsters myself. So I would give the breathing and the mouth opening, and then add layers to create the sound.
I see, yeah.
I know.
But then again, I have to tell you, because I was recording these at home in my toilet, because I wanted to have the specific acoustics, and the kids were at school.
Is that where the chicken was, by the way? Or?
That was after the chicken. The kids were at school, but you should have seen the face of my cat. After I spent an hour at home going... It took like a lot of homeopathy to calm down the cat for several weeks.
I like that howling. I like the look there.
That's great.
Good shot of the
beautiful shot.
The actor with a full mechanical face in front. Of course, I hate that he kills him. Just can't stand that. Like vampire killing a cool werewolf. That's not right. And then we get on to the hybrid thing, which was another one. Actually, this is the one that took the longest to develop with Len. The hybrid character. Obviously, this is our lead actor, so it was a bit more of a challenge. I remember an early sketch of Len was like tiny little hair, almost like a deer or something like this, all over the place, which we slowly changed. Since the wolf were not very hairy, it didn't make much sense that the hybrid would be super hairy. So
I remember the debates about color.
Color as well.
Big deal.
Exactly.
That's enough. You come with me.
I only hope I live long enough to see Victor choke the life from you.
I bet you do. But let me tell you a little something about your beloved Dark Father. He's the one who killed your family, not the Lycans. Never could follow his own rules. Said he couldn't abide the taste of livestock. So every once in a while he went out and gorged himself on human blood. I kept his secrets, cleaned up the mess. But it was he who crept room to room.
So again, here the whole oral environment is based on the Munich sewer system recording.
Which is the tone, the room tone, or what's?
It's the tone, and it's been a very, we have recorded that in a very rich sewer environment, lots of water dripping, and we would leave people at the other end of the tunnel, which was literally 3 to 4 miles away, and do little and the sound would travel and hit the microphone in a very faint way, but very interesting.
Well, that's what's great. It's not always in your face. It's there, but it just creates the mood. You don't have to really pay attention to it, but it just, it's always there. I think that's what works.
Comes the old Steve Martin arrow through the head gag, which worked very well.
Yes.
Bite him. Half vampire, half lichen, are stronger than both.
This blood drop that I love coming off of Scott's neck here. Just Luma did a wonderful job of. We couldn't make it work practically. Never looked
too
good.
So tight, so yeah.
Yeah, and it just the timing was always wrong, or there was too much blood, or not enough blood. CG solved it. And
Was that a location?
we're back in that same factory.
Yeah, but you had to build a substantial amount of stuff
Of
in
course,
there for like
of
those
course.
stunt walls and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Forgive me, my child.
It wasn't the Lycans. It was you.
Leave us.
The idea behind this transformation sequence was that Scott would become, or Michael would be basically go from human form to werewolf form, and then go through the werewolf form into something that was greater than the werewolf. So these initial 2 steps will be that transformation and stepped out to werewolf, and then you'll see the werewolf begin to regress and become, the hybrid idea that we talked about a few minutes ago.
It's really the mix between the wolf and the vampire, somewhere in between. Yeah, Len always wanted that. Want to see him going a lot further and then come back. I like this, actually. It's like something you can't really control properly.
What sort of guidance did Len give for the hybrid design? I mean, was it... He wanted it, I know, to be slick and to be less, obviously much smaller than the werewolf itself, but...
You wanted to keep him elegant. I think it was a challenge because, the wolf became so impressive that to make this without making him more creature-like. We didn't want him to become too much of a creature, actually. You need to retain the quality of the actor there. And I think it was just on developing, and Len would just interact with different aspects of design. What I did early with this is I would not do sketches, but I would work Photoshop directly on the actor to make sure that I wasn't going in too much in the fantasy land, but we stayed close to our character. And it was mostly playing with color, actually. Color was the biggest challenge. Plus, obviously, there was an aspect. When you see him now, his body has been bulked up substantially. So there's an aspect of extra, the rib cage I've portrayed like in a wolf somewhere. So there's an aspect of appliance makeup all over his body as well. I mean, on the upper torso. And but the color was the most. And I'm looking at it. I think in the environment looks pretty good. I was very impressed with this, the way the guy actually brought.
Initially, Len wanted a darker color. Wasn't it like a black or something?
Black.
Like,
but black. Sometimes you want to go somewhere. If you want to create layer, black doesn't allow the layer. You need some dark color, like a deep blue with deeper tones in it. And then you start creating layer. You feel more transparency than a jet black thing, And the wolf, same thing. They were never truly black. They were extremely dark, but I love this fight.
Yeah.
For the power of it. I mean,
it's great. And sound design is helping enormously.
Right.
I mean, I remember watching the cut of the scene before we'd added any of the punches or really any significant music of any sort. And, it was extremely well done and well staged, but the impact of the sequence is being brought by the sound work.
Those pieces of appliance we put on the actor to make him look... The worst place you can put that stuff is in water. So that was the challenge, because after a while the pieces sort of like unglue themselves, they start flipping around.
I think everybody tried to talk Len out of shooting the sequence in water, and he stuck to his guns and absolutely right to do so.
Yeah, exactly. I'm all for it. I think it's a great idea. You just have to pay more attention to how the thing look like, when you look at dailies and stuff, make sure that the stuff looks right. It's not ungluing or whatever.
Well, from a visual effects point of view, it was scary because you start dealing with, in the transformation, you're dealing with water being displaced. I mean,
exactly.
When he goes to werewolf, the werewolf is going to be 2 feet taller than he is, so you would expect to deal with the displacement issues and the ripples and things that you would want to shoot practically to have it look real. But we got around it, mostly through editorial, avoiding these issues. And it just looks absolutely cool. I mean, how cool does this look with the splashes coming up and the fact that he's soaking wet and shiny? I mean, it's exactly as it should be. Nice bit of Foley. This is great. And Brad Martin did a brilliant job of staging this fight. It's very epic.
Yeah.
And how often do you see a movie where it ends in fisticuffs? I mean, it's always a gun battle or a car chase, or the films, they always try to top each other, make them bigger and bigger and bigger, and here we did the simple thing and it's really effective.
I love that shot. The landing is really cool.
it's a huge treat to sit with an audience when they watch what happens here. When the head slides off, it's the howl that goes up is very gratifying. Great reveal. My favorite part about this visual effects is the collar moving, because obviously Bill Nye we didn't cut his head in half, so that's CG doing the work, and just adding that little detail of the collar just moving, to me sells the shot.
Mm.
This last cue, I think, is a fantastic piece of score. I mean, it really, very beautiful, conveys all the emotions that you wanted to convey, which are very complicated. It's not,
Good music or sound design here?
Mm-hmm. Look at that makeup, it's fantastic. Tony's done a great job lighting it. It's the colors dead on.
You're just saying it. There's one thing, like you can do anything you want if it's not shot properly. I mean, creatures are not easy to shoot. They could look very rubbery, very mechanical, easily. Whoever does them, I think it's important to have someone that understands that. And you told me he didn't do too much of that work before. I guess he did an amazing job on this one.
He did.
A bunch of commentary that friends have sent me saying like, man, finally someone that shoots the creature great. And it is the case. I mean, it takes it to another level. You believe them, and for that, it doesn't work without a great lighting, a great sound. Like
he didn't hide the creature like so frequently. You see these movies, they put him in shadow, and
exactly.
But by the same token, he didn't put in bright light. He gave it a personality and a lighting that just enhanced the work that you had done.
It makes a huge difference, no?
The score's great.
Though I cannot predict the future, the consequences of this night will reverberate through the halls of both great covens.
See it better now.
2 vampire elders have been slain, one by my own hand.
Do you think they're gonna make a sequel?
We certainly hope so. There was no point to this ending if we don't make a sequel.
That's my point.
Obviously, CG top of the crypt.
Yeah.
Very nicely done.
Yeah, nice transition.
Allegiances will be made, and soon I will become the hunted.
Well, the fact that it goes too quiet. It's supposed to be big, loud, and then we hit the music.
Oh, I love it.
It's fantastic.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
confession. Unless you don't give a good goddamn about redemption. I know Christ is coming, so am I. And you would too if the sexy devil caught your eye. She'll suck you dry, and still you'll cry to be back in her bosom. To do it again, she'll make you weep and moan and cry to be back in her bosom. To do it again. Pray till I go blind. Pray, 'cause nobody ever survives. Praying to stay in your arms just until I can die a little longer. Saviors and saints, devils and demons alike, she'll lead you alive. Jesus is risen. It's no surprise, even he would martyr his mama to ride to hell between those thighs. The pressure is building at the base of my spine. If I gotta sin to see her